And we are good. Okay, great. Okay, so to the approval items, the first item up for approval are the minutes from the March 14th meeting. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor of approving those minutes? Okay, thank you. The next item is a proposal to approve a $250,000 deposit on the purchase of 584 Driggs, which will go hard and become non-refundable on April 30th. Is there anything else I should be adding to that request? We're good.
Only that it's being done by amendment to the purchase agreement.
By amendment to the purchase agreement, that's right. Okay, any questions, comments? All in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Josh, we'll turn it over to you for, you want to focus on SLC right now?
I think we'll go to AFC first.
Okay.
And I think there's a quick monthly report out from Alex. Chris has the video for us. So Chris, you want to share that? And then we can go into any other updates from Friday's AFC call for the full board.
Good evening. This is the presentation of the February financials for Unity Prep. As you can see on our summary page, all of our financial indicators are well within state ed metrics. Current days cash on hand is about 102 compared to the goal of 60 days. This is reporting our enrollment as of the February invoice. We have 544 students enrolled as of February. We do see a slight variance in enrollment based on our budget of 519 and our current invoice of 544. That will be adjusted slightly when we report out for March. That invoice has had a slight change, both with the total number of students and then the breakdowns within special education categories. Based on our enrollment and also the variances and expenses that we've been tracking, we see a surplus of about $658,000 at the end of the year. I do expect that will be a little bit smaller as we continue to close out the rest of the year. No call outs on the balance sheet. Our actual P&L to date has us at about $561,000 compared to a budget of $274,000. We are seeing some variances around professional services, recruitment, and some of our student services, including transportation and clubs, which we have already discussed and reported out previously. And cash continues to look healthy in the short term and through the end of the year.
And I think that is all. So just a quick update with regard to Alex. Some of you all are aware of this. She is going to be transitioning from Unity to take a job with a smaller nonprofit in New York City. And so she is going to be staying with us through the middle of this month. And then moving on from there, we have hired someone to fill her shoes. And I want to thank Marion and Jeanette for taking part in a part of the interview process there. Alex was obviously very much involved in that process. So we have someone coming in who we feel really good about. That person starts next week. So there'll be some overlap with Alex. And then from there, we'll kind of decide on the degree to which we lean on Alex to help with further transitions. But that's an update. We wish Alex well. I don't think she'll be a full stranger. I think you might see her back at some point in time, but she will be moving on from Unity this month. I think in addition to that, with regard to AFC, we talked a bit about recruitment. We talked about this transition, and we talked a bit about the budget prep for the coming year, which is still kind of an early form, but just some key considerations there, including staffing, the way in which the purchase of the building may impact the budget, et cetera. So nothing to share out for the full board tonight, but we had a good conversation at the committee level last week on some of those ins and outs, and we'll have a draft budget prepared for the committee and the full board in May. Anything else, Mario and Jeanette, worth offering?
I don't think so.
No, not on my end.
And so from a DFC perspective, we did have a call with Cliff and with others during our monthly time this past week. And so good call, but nothing to bring the full board that we didn't bring already tonight. So I think that call was a preview of what you saw tonight. So nothing more from a DFC end. With regard to ECPC and enrichment and partnership with community, we talked about some of the advocacy work that's been going on behind the scenes with our downward expansion. We talked about mentoring a bit and some of the ways in which we might bring that to form at the school in the coming year, and some of the upcoming school events that I announced earlier we discussed. And so that was a summary of the call, and nothing to fully bring to board to deliberate tonight there. We then moved to the SLC. We discussed some of the headlines that you saw at the front end of this meeting. We talked about graduation rates, and then also talked about high school mock exams. And so Melissa's going to kind of share out some high findings there and our next steps as we think about preparing kids for end of year exams, both in May and June.
Thanks, Josh. I think everyone can see in the school leader report the status of the Regents mock exams that we're tracking most closely. Here, also, if you look at the SLC slides from this week, you'll be able to see more comprehensively both our AP and Regents exams. I'll focus on the AP exams because that is not information folks have right in front of them. Our mock exams at the high school are sort of ripped from the past actual AP or Regents exams. Those, of course, are meant to be end of course exams for students given in May or June, respectively, and comprehensive of all standards. So students were tested on some subject matter that they had not been exposed to by that point, though the styles of questions are representative of things that students had seen. When we look sort of high level, and I think we're going high level based on time this evening, we are well on track for our English and history AP exams. When we take into consideration the students who are scoring in the close band would have some time and opportunity to learn the new content, as well as some concerted reteaching and preparation. We are also, our AP environmental science course looks like it's well on track. We are off track on AP biology and on AP calculus, some of our higher level math leaning courses. And then reactively, some of the things we're doing, we set aside some time for planning. Folks are doing reteaches in class, as well as a push for tutoring at the high school, which is the invite only time we spend with students immediately following the school day. We've been working very closely with families, monitoring who attends, and rewarding students who attend with food and other prizes. We did another mock examination last Friday, less for data and planning purposes and more for experience purposes, to allow students the opportunity to sit down, get another chance at least one of their long AP exams. It had a very celebratory atmosphere with lunch and music. We had 88% of students who take one of the tests that was mocked on that day attend, even though it was a day that they could have had a remote day. So we are excited for them. We also had Jacob Lazar, one of our AP teachers who's been with us for 5 years now, kick off a break academy, where a number of his students came in lieu of their spring break to prepare for this examination. So those are some things in the AP front. A lot of that is mimicked and mirrored within our Regents push. We use these kids were silent all evening, by the way. We used our the same mock examination to craft tutoring groups and to craft academies, as well as to think of some ways to incentivize and hype up students ahead of Regents. Josh, do you want to go through the Regents and put up the school leader report, or we feel like we're good because folks have seen it?
I'm happy to, if folks would like to dive into it.
I don't know if that's a yes or a no. I think everybody's on. So maybe do a quick overview, Josh.
Great.
All right, so I'm going to reshare my screen. And there it is.
Yeah. I also have a 41-point slide presentation for this, but I didn't think we could squeeze that in this evening specifically. Okay, so here are the 4 exams that we track closest. A little bit of context, remember that students are taking end of year exams. You're also looking at Global 2 there, and do remember that with Global 2, we only test a portion. All of the students who take that world history Regents are not included there. We're also not looking, and you can look at the SLC slides, at the number of students performing in the close bucket who are within 10 percentage points, which is 10 fewer. It's not 10 points, it's fewer than 10 questions on all exams, almost all exams. So for living environment, this is the course we are most concerned and watching closely. This one did have a large number, 18% of students in that close bucket, but we still have more students than we'd want to see scoring in that far below basic bucket, and we are looking for an 80% pass rate there. So we do have some concerns that while we will increase year over year our performance on that exam, that we might not make our benchmarks this year, though we have provided additional tutoring. We are providing more coach oversight with the planning, etc. for that course. Algebra 1 is currently at 41%, though we have a larger number of students there performing within that close bucket, with looking at to perform similarly that as we did last year. Last year we beat the state with a 62%. And we're looking at a score within the 60s and hopefully quite a bit higher. There was a good portion of this exam that was new to students. So we believe we were looking in that course specifically, all math courses are doing week over week assessments, mini assessments on Wednesdays, looking at these kind of questions and skills, stepping back each week, and we're seeing good improvements in that course. Global 2 is another course where we're seeing 53% on this assessment. Again, it wasn't inclusive of all students, but when we look at that, we would far exceed our goals for the year if students in that below basic bucket, which was about 27% of students, were to move into that basic or proficient bucket. And that would, so this is a course where we do hope that we are on track. When we do remember that a large number of students are also taking the harder exam first, we are hopeful that this will be a stronger showing. And then ELA 2 has 52% of students currently passing, and then but we have another 21% of students in that next bucket. And again, we think that the supports that they're receiving are sufficient to move students into that bucket, which would put us within our goal. Any questions or recommendations from the team here?
When are the final exams happening?
Yep. Our first AP exam in AP Government is happening this coming Monday, the 1st. Those exams run for 9 days or 9 instructional days, so until the 11th. And then our first Regents exam is June 1st. Then there's like a 2-week break. The US History Regents is it is the first time the state will administer the exam in that style. So it is earlier than the other exams, so the state can create the cut scores. And then the majority of the Regents happen from mid to the end of June.
Thank you.
Welcome. So not tons of time, but some time.
That was the remember going back years ago, the kids felt a boatload of pressure just sitting down and taking an exam. Is that still around, or are they used to this now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely still around. We have a number of students who exhibit like high levels of anxiety. Some even have, special medical accommodations that provide them with extra time or a different space because of that level of anxiety. We do try to mitigate that as much as possible in a few key ways. One is infusing as much joy as we possibly can. Like I said, there was a fancy breakfast where they were making pancakes on the spot, like hand delivered to kids last week before the AP mock examinations. We also give kids a couple of opportunities to try it in a more low stakes environment with us, where it doesn't count nationally or towards graduation, just to normalize that process and coach them through. But it's a lot, and especially given the reality that either college credit or your graduation is online with these exams, they can provide a lot of pressure.
Yeah, great.
Even my 9-year-old is like, it's a little stressful, but kind of
Aw.
fun. Yeah, he's fine. He liked that they got a mint and pizza and got to play in the park. Like it's like us when you have a big presentation or something. It's hard. But we've got things to fall back on to help us through, and we try to give that to the kiddos too.
I think with that, we're up to the next to last item on the agenda, which is public comment.
Okay, you want to move on, Josh?
Yeah,
Correct.
and then in thinking about the next meeting, which is going to be on May 23rd, obviously based on what we discussed tonight, we may have some new news and big news over the coming month prior to that meeting. But in looking at our governance calendar annually, in May, we typically have school calendar come up for approval. We typically review board policies, conflict of interest, code of ethics, whistleblower policy, etc. So that would be something on the next month's agenda. The Form 990 is something we typically look at and approve in May. And then employee benefits and plans, including property casualty insurance. And so those may be on the docket come May.
All right. If we're gonna do any of the insurance things, we shouldn't start having information trickling in. So maybe Chris can separately tell me how that's progressing. Do we want to pick a tentative date, or Josh, do you want to send a doodle so that we have a date for a meeting, assuming we go to the bond market sometime the week of the 15th, 16th, for those resolutions? And maybe you can check with Cliff how much time ahead of time that has to be done and buttoned up and, vetted by people. But I would imagine early the week of the 8th, but it might have to be late the preceding week. I don't know. But let's not scramble to schedule that at the last minute. Let's see if we can't sort of pick a
I got
date.
that.
I'd say before the end of this week would be good.
Yeah, let's get that time on Friday in the calendars, and
Right.
be fun.
Okay.
And then I would like to have a sort of a subcategory of timeline for the whole board saying, you know, the relevant documents that we're gonna need to approve are gonna be circulated in whatever form, like at least 2 or 3 days before the meeting, and then this is the list of documents you're gonna have to look at. And, you know, this is the date at which we're gonna have a meeting to approve them.
Mhm. Cool. All right. I think that's it.
All right, terrific.
Okay.
Thanks,
Chris,
everybody.
Go, can go off.